Hello dreamers and make-believers. In today's video, I am recommending my top 5 fantasy. Woohoo! Now, this was really difficult to do. I mean, I was like, this book, no this book, no this book, no this book, no this book, this book, this book, this book, this book, this book. Ah! So as you can imagine, it was really hard for me to choose my top 5 fantasy, and I only read YA fantasy most of the time. I mean, like 99.9% of the time. I mean, I've read other stuff just because it seems interesting, like Shakespeare and like, you know, Jane Eyre every now and then, but no, it's mostly YA fantasy, and I just couldn't decide. So I feel like there's some obvious ones that deserve like a shout out. Holla! But they are not, it's not fair to put them on the list because they're just that good, and it's probably on everybody's list, so, you know, it's not fair. So those, of course, let me just give them a little shout out, are the Harry Potters. I mean, if we're talking top 5, this is like number 1. But, of course, it's not fair because Harry Potter's on like everybody's list. So, moving on. Then, of course, there's Game of Thrones, which actually I can't technically recommend because I haven't read it, but I've started reading it, and what I have read is just really good, and I feel like I would put this on my top 5, but then again, everybody probably would recommend Game of Thrones, so again, not gonna mention it. And then, you know, gotta be done. But if I'm recommending YA fantasy that I want everybody to read, then of course a little self-promotion of At Water's Edge, which I would love everybody to read. So if you haven't gotten a copy of At Water's Edge, you can get it for 99 cents on Amazon, or you can get it free by subscribing to my newsletter, which I will link below. Holla to self-promotion! And now on to the genuine recommendations after saying the ones that I would obviously recommend. So are you ready for the YA fantasy tour of your life? Bibbidi, bobbidi, boo! Now, these are in no particular order because for me to do that would have been horrendous. It would have been even worse than just trying to choose my top 5. It would have been like, so I didn't do it. So the first one I'll be recommending, again in no particular order, is The Mortal Instruments. This is the series by Cassandra Clare. She is incredible. I love all the books in this series. It is 6 books or 5, 6 books, and now she's got Lady Midnight, and she's got the Bane Chronicles, and just there's so much awesomeness that this woman does. But anyways, or the Infernal Devices. But anyway, so I'm recommending the Mortal Instruments series. This is probably the series that got me into writing after, of course, Harry Potter. This was like where I just saw, you know, her style's much more adult because it's aimed at young adults, whereas Harry Potter is more middle grade at the beginning. So, you know, this got me really into writing, just the way she put things together, her sentences, her imagery, everything is just so incredible. I love Cassandra Clare's style. And this follows the life of Clary, who is, or she believes she is, an ordinary girl in New York, except she can see things that ordinary people can't see, such as these people called the Shadow Hunters, and she can see demons. She basically goes on this adventure, which will all make sense with family history and all this stuff, and ruins, and demons, and vampires, and werewolves, and it's just really incredible. It's so fantastical, and it's such a good series, and like I said, her writing is so immersive, and it's just great. So I highly recommend The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. The next series that I am recommending, you may notice that I cheated and didn't do 5 books, but like 5 series. But anyways, so the next book that I am recommending is by the glorious Leigh Bardugo. Bibbidi bobbidi boo! The Commissioner Trilogy. Oh my goodness. So the first book in this trilogy is Shadow and Bone. The second book is Siege and Storm, and the third book is Ruin and Rising. And oh my goodness, all these 3 books are just fantastic. Now, Ruin and Rising is probably my favorite, but I think that's simply because it's the conclusion, and you find out what happens finally after everything in the first 2 books, and the payoff is just ridiculous. Oh my gosh, still I think about it, and I read it like months ago, and still I think about the climax of the 3rd book, and I'm just reeling from it, and I still have all the feels. It's just such a good series. Now, the protagonist in this little baby is Alinka Starkov, and she also thinks that she's an ordinary girl, but she goes on to find out that she is much more than that. I won't spoil it just in case it is a spoiler, because I can't remember with these series. I mean, basically you find out early on what these people are, but I just don't want to ruin anymore. So she finds out that she's much more than an ordinary girl, and she has a best friend, Mal, who is just awesome. But in order to be who she truly is, she has to leave Mal, and that's something she's not quite sure she wants to do. And she has to enter this whole other world that she's not quite sure she's ready to enter. And it's just a great series that dives into like possibilities and civil war and there's princes and there's powers, and it's just so fantastically amazing. And Veronica Roth wrote Unlike Anything I've Ever Read, and I love Veronica Roth as well, so I think that's worth noting. So definitely recommend the Grisha Trilogy if you have not read it. Bibbidi bobbidi. Six of Crows is the third series book that I am recommending in the Fantasy Recommends series that I'm currently doing right now. So Six of Crows is by Leigh Bardugo, another one by Leigh Bardugo. She's just awesome. The second one is called Crooked Kingdom, which came out not long ago, and again was just an amazing climax because Six of Crows is a duology. So Six of Crows follows the life of six people, the Crows, who like live in the dregs, and they pull off this incredible heist. Now, the thing that makes it magical and fantastical is that there's Grisha, like the Grisha from the Grisha Trilogy, and it's in the same world, but like a different city. So it follows the six crows pulling off this incredible heist. They're like thugs from like the dregs, and it just follows them pulling off this incredible heist and how they do it or don't do it, and what happens along the way that changes their lives and molds them into these incredible people. There is so much history to each character that takes place before the story, but you find out in such a captivating way, and you just feel so much more connected to those characters. So I really, 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 really recommend Six of Crows if you like to just really, really like character-driven stories. It's just so incredible. Wingardium Leviosa. The fourth book that I'm recommending, again in no particular order, is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. Now, this is also a series. I haven't read King's Cage, which just came out very recently. I have read the second, which is Glass Sword. Now, I gotta say, I preferred Red Queen to Glass Sword, but I feel like Red Queen is like the series itself is definitely going to be amazing, and it's definitely going places. And the twist in Red Queen is just so incredible, and the experience of reading Red Queen is so great that I highly, highly, highly recommend Red Queen. It follows the life of Mare Barrow, and they all start out people thinking they're ordinary, so she also thinks she's an ordinary girl. There's reds and there's silvers, and the reds have red blood, the silvers have silver blood, and the silvers are kind of like in charge of the reds because the reds are commoners like me and you, and the silvers have magical powers or like power abilities that, you know, help them control climate and control strength and all this stuff. So they have these amazing, incredible gifts that make them the rulers or like the best people in this world that Mare is a part of, and she's a red. But what happens is that she finds out that she's a red with silver abilities, and it's just incredible. Incredible. So it follows Mare in her ordinary life, and what happens to reds is that they have to go fight in the war, or they have to go and like or they have to get a job. So she's like coming to the age where she needs to either get a job or go to the war, and so is her friend. So for her friend, who's also amazing and so nice, she decides that she's going to find a way to get the money, and it basically follows her in how she decides she's going to try and get the money to save her friend and herself from having to go to this war, and it then leads to a different unexpected adventure, and her meeting people that she doesn't expect to meet, and her doing things that she doesn't expect to do, and leads to her discovering her ability, and then the real epic craziness begins, and it's just so good. So yeah, so just I recommend Red Queen.
Bibby, Bobby, Boo!
Now, the fifth and final book / series that I am recommending is probably my most favorite out of all of these books. Like I said, it's really hard to narrow down, and I don't want to like don't you know hold me to that, but I do believe that the next series I'm about to recommend is my favorite out of all of them. Not out of the obvious ones like Harry Potter and stuff, but out of all the four that I've recommended, like this one is the best, I think. Possibly. Yes. I don't know. It is the magnificent, the incredible, the insatiable ACOTAR and ACOMAF series. So ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, is the first in the series, and then ACOMAF, A Court of Mist and Fury, is the second in the series, and the third one is coming out so soon, A Court of Wings and Ruin, which I cannot wait to get my hands on. Like, I am just itching for it. So I think my favorite in the series is definitely A Court of Mist and Fury. It's just so glorious. But that makes me confident in the series because this one was so good. It was so good. And then this one just blew it out of the water. And it's just like, oh my gosh, so what's the third book going to do? It's just going to be incredible. So this series is an incredible retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but with so many different twists and turns and takes on Beauty and the Beast. But it starts out with Feyre, who I said is a huntress, and so she's out hunting one day and she kills a wolf, but then finds out that this wolf is actually a fairy, an immortal fairy living in a different side of their world, and so killing this creature is like against the rules, and so she is then forced to go to this other side of the world and like pay the price for killing this creature. And her captor is this guy called Tamlin, who always wears a mask. She never sees his face, the beast. And it's just so intriguing, so exciting, and you just want to see where the story's going. And then a whole bunch of stuff happens that just boggles the mind, and there's riddles, and there's evil, and there's just so much happening, and some people you just don't know if they're good or bad, and then it all comes to this delicious, beautiful end, and then Akamath just steals the show and takes it on a completely like different twist that your mind just boggles. Now this is more new adult than young adult just because it has some pretty raunchy scenes, I must say, some pretty raunchy scenes, but young adults need some raunch in their life, and it's young adult slash new adult, so I highly recommend it, still in my new adult, young adult fantasy recommendations. So those are my top 5 recommendations of fantasy so far. I am currently reading Shatter Me. I'm going to be reading Falling Kingdoms. I mean, there's so many that I haven't yet read, so let's see how I go. But for now, those are my top 5 fantasy recommendations. If you have any favorite YA fantasies that I haven't recommended here or that you haven't seen in previous videos, then please do recommend them, because they are my favorite genre, and I would just love to get more and more and more. Not that I need them, but I would just love to get them. So please recommend them if you have any suggestions, and I'll see you next time. Bye!